The Clockmaker by John Van Stan. Long ago, there was a village with no name. For this was a time before names were bestowed upon places people loved enough to call home. This village lay in a valley, where the land and its life wove together so seamlessly that the very notion of naming was alien. Should a stranger ask any inhabitant, "What name have you given your home?" And what an inexplicable oddity such a question would be in this place, the villager would be at a loss for words. By sight, smell, sound, and the many senses that humanity would eventually catalog, the village was recognized by its inhabitants. 2 ancient hills bordered the village, embracing a river that wove through its heart. Life was simple, marked by the rhythm of this river, the changing seasons, and the dependable yet ever awe-inspiring dance of sun and moon that painted the vast expanse above in shifting colors. Homes were simple yet proud, their white walls gleaming in the sun, topped with thatched roofs that chattered in rain and whispered in wind. Cobbled streets meandered like ancient stories, leading one the courtyards alive with the symphony of genuine laughter, the soft cadence of elders' tales, and the innocent chirping of birds. Each of these details were worthy of naming a village after, and yet it was simply called the village. And those who dwelt there had no identity save for the one they were born with, for at this time, no other identity was needed for neighbors. A person was known by their essence, by the songs they hummed, the way they sowed seeds and nurtured their plot of earth, or by the stories they wove beneath a starlit sky. They were the villagers of the village, a title enough for their contented hearts. And the villagers knew intuitively that each heart was as uniquely contented as it was uniquely challenged by life. Hence, they were fond of the child who played in her own way, the elder who fawned over memories, and even the young man who pondered over patterns. This young pattern ponderer was often found lost in thought, while others gazed up at the sky to admire the beauty of the stars. He saw constellations as storytellers, chronicling cosmic tales the heavens repeated night after night. When most heard the gentle babbling of the river, he detected repetitions as if the waters spoke in some voice that could be comprehended. It was not detachment, but absorption. The world around him was an intricate and beautiful puzzle. Not just nature, but even the nuances of daily village life. All seemed to beckon to him with mysteries to unravel, and the villagers watched with amusement and awe. His unique way of perceiving life was alien yet fascinating, like the birds' songs, the wind's murmurs, and the flowers' blooms. Each has its place in the happy village. Children, their innocent eyes wide with wonder, would cluster around him as he etched patterns into the earth with a stick, explaining the season's dance by drawing the many sky paths of the sun. Elders often shared age-old tales, enriching his observations, and as days turned to nights and back again, the young man's passion began to take shape. He felt the universe unveiling a mystery to him, one of time and motion. To the rest of the village, time was like the river, flowing without question and bearing all things along. But to him, it was an enigma and a muse. In his dwelling day and night, even amid the dim glimmers of dwindling candlelight, all sensed that something wondrous was taking form in the flickering shadows. One morning, when the flickering shadows retreated, they revealed a wonder to the beams of dawn that peeked through the windows of this young man's workshop. He had left early that morning to let the villagers know today was the day. His creation was complete, and he would reveal it to them all at the town square. Word spread more swiftly than the beams of dawn could bathe the valley, and woke the villagers more thoroughly. Children with cheeks flushed from excitement dashed between the adults, their laughter ringing out like the sounds wind rings out between clattering chimes. Elders shared predictions and stories of yore, wondering if anything from their tales had inspired the young man. In the heart of the village square, Draped beneath a simple curtain sheet stood his creation. It was taller than most villagers. Its silhouette was strange, slender but sturdy, and it chattered softly in an enchanting rhythm, tick-tock, tick-tock, hinting at the wonder beneath. Some who were listening close to the structure required a polite touch to rouse them from their ponderings, which the young man did as he approached through the crowd. Once the way was clear, he pulled away the tapestry with a dramatic flourish. The crowd gasped collectively. In that instant, this young man became known not just as the one who sees patterns, but as a creator. For before them stood a melding of art and mechanics, a beautiful wood-carved case filled with moving metal. These intricate gears, forged from dull rock, now shimmered in the sunlight and moved with a synchronicity that was almost hypnotic. The woodwork was exquisite, with grains and patterns telling the stories of trees from across the village hills. It had a face that mirrored the sky's phases, a deep azure with painted stars that twinkled mysteriously, and hands that moved with silent grace. What were these movements of? What did they signify? Before these questions could travel from mind to mouth, they were answered instinctively. Thus, the moment remained as silently profound as the realization. It marked time, second by second, minute by minute. All the villagers were entranced. Time had always flowed around them like moving clouds or the setting sun, but now they could touch it, count it, hold it in their midst. Children reached out with hesitant fingers, tracing the whirling gears beneath their glass cover and the smoothly polished wood. Their eyes were fixed in wonder. Elders nodded appreciatively, seeing in this masterpiece a reflection of their stories, their wisdom, and the village's timeless spirit. All doted over this creation like a newborn baby and asked the young man if he had named it. It was to be called a clock. The clock was immediately recognized as more than just a marker of time, but as a bridge between the village's age-old traditions and the boundless possibilities of the future. The young man's creation was not just a testament to his skill, but also to the village's belief in the magic that happens when art meets mechanism, where the mutterings of dreams meld with the cadence prose of reality. So impressed were all the villagers that they thought it of the highest honor to name the young man after his creation. He was now reverently called the Clockmaker. Well, the Clockmaker was proud and happy, but he was still a pattern ponderer at heart. So he continued with his ponderings, watching nature and his neighbors, and as days turned to weeks, he began to notice that the village was transforming. At dawn, morning yawns, once languid and contented, turned into hurried awakenings. From his workshop window, the Clockmaker began to see homes where the sun's gentle kiss no longer coaxed families from slumber. Instead, windows lit up with a suddenness that, although echoing the precise chimes of the clock, set a rhythm previously unfamiliar in the village. The tranquil glow of dawn was now pierced with urgency, but for what exactly the Clockmaker could not discern. Sunrises, once a spectacle of shared enjoyment, where villagers and nature glowed in a golden halo of expectant joy for a new day of life, seemed now to be one where humans hurried by their puzzled animal brethren. He went to these neighbors and he asked, "Where are you going?" Their answers were strange, as they said more about the time than where or what. "I have an appointment at 8 sharp," said one. Another said, "Please, Clockmaker, I'm late. I was supposed to arrive at 7:30. The Clockmaker furrowed his smooth brow. While ambling along the cobbled streets, he enjoyed watching the children at play. Their carefree play, once boundless, was subtly shifting its center toward the looming clock tower, some even playing mostly in its shadow. Their bright eyes, which once roamed freely over the world's wonders, now frequently and anxiously glanced at the clock's face from its shade. "My mom said I need to be home by 11, a young girl said to another. Games, once seemingly endless and carefree, developed more frequent interruptions, where children checked the clock, and more sudden conclusions marked by the clock's hourly chime. The children's parting words began to meld with the afternoon chiming of the clockmaker's creation, and he began to shiver at the sound. As he wandered past the village square, he would often stop to listen to the elderly, their stories, once wide, meandering rivers of memory and wisdom, now seemed to flow within the narrow, linear banks set by the clock's chiming. He noticed that the depth in their eyes, which once reflected tales spun until their hearts were content, were now frequently disrupted by glances at the towering timekeeper. "I must wrap this up before the half-hour," an old storyteller whispered to a fellow elder. Their wisdom, once imparted in the time it took for a tale to naturally unfold, was now hurriedly dispensed, constrained by the ticking of minutes and hours. Realizing that even the timelessness of elder tales had become bound to the relentless tick-tocking of his creation, the clockmaker suddenly felt each soft mechanical beat vying with the rhythms of his heart, as if every tick and tock tightened the very fibers of his breast. Daily, the clockmaker felt the village's soul tighten. Once a vibrant tapestry of shared moments and memories, it was now wound up by the ticking of his creation. He had aimed to bridge the village's traditions with the future's wonders. Yet he saw a barrier building, chime by chime, that was slowly and steadily separating past from present. Time, which had flowed gently through the village's stories and lives, now marched to the relentless beat of his clock, a stern, unempathetic conductor. Because of this, as the years ticked by, the patterns of village life no longer inspired the clockmaker with wonder, but with anxiety and sorrow. Disheartened, he distanced himself from his creation, and his creation distanced him from his neighbors. Nature and its patterns had changed too, but there all his wonder-seeking strayed. The clockmaker's enchantment with nature became less and less appreciated by the people, eventually earning him the village's mockery. Labeled an eccentric, his timeless wanderings now appeared trivial to a village ruled by the clock. In the village's new order, value was no longer bestowed upon the intrinsic worth of things, but on some measure of time. The mighty oak, which once stood as a testament to nature's grandeur, was now just a measure of hours. How long it took to fell, chop up, and turn into a sellable product. Its intrinsic beauty, the centuries it took to grow, the stories it might have told, and even the hands that worked upon it, all were overshadowed by the price tag defined mostly in terms of labor hours. Efficiency reigned supreme. Those who accomplished more in fewer hours were praised, while any who poured their souls into their craft were dismissed for taking too long. Time-saving was the new currency, and those who minted it were its richest men. Everywhere the clockmaker went, time now hounded him. No longer did the clock chimes stay confined to the square. They echoed in hushed whispers, overt jibes, and in the patronizing glances of the villagers. Every tick of the clock felt like a sharp, piercing reminder of the clockmaker's unintended legacy, reverberating back at him in cruel mockery. One night, as the mocking chimes silenced the comforting patterns of crickets and owls, he could no longer bear it. So he made his way to the clock tower under the shroud of darkness. The cold, metallic heart of his creation reflected the dim starlight almost as if it recognized its creator. This heart, which once filled the clockmaker with pride, now felt grotesque and monstrous, and its glint of starlight now felt like a perverse momentary imprisonment of the infinite space that conveyed such wondrous light to the earth. The gears and pulleys, once symbols of innovation and progress, now lay unmasked as chains and shackles. As the midnight chimes began their haunting melody, he set to work. With each piece he removed, a burden seemed to lift from his shoulders. He did not just dismantle wood and metal. He was exorcising a demon, tearing apart a beast he had unintentionally birthed. The metallic clinks of cogs, springs, and hands falling to the ground were the cathartic shattering of his own regrets. Suddenly, in his fervor, he slipped on a pool of his own sweat and tumbled into the pile of debris, the grave of his brainchild. After a moment of disoriented struggle, he pulled himself free, taking deep breaths to calm his racing heart. When the clattering ceased, he breathlessly listened. Silence. The once authoritative tick-tock was silenced forever. When dawn broke, the villagers found the remnants of the clock scattered across the square, its once proud hands lying lifeless. But the clockmaker was nowhere to be found, and none knew how to fix it. Time itself suddenly seemed free and abundant, but in a troubling fashion, for none who remained in the village remembered how to spend what was free, or how to value what was once precious for its scarcity. This discomfort was enough to drive them to understand the mechanisms, and to make clocks small enough to hang on their walls, and eventually on their wrists. But few, very few, made such items artfully. Most made the faces simple, large, and round, and hid all the intricacies behind a plank. Rumors spread of a lone figure wandering in the wilds, of a man who had chosen to live among nature, cherishing its patterns, free from the shackles of measured time. Most agreed that this was the old clockmaker. Some said that he had gone mad, while others believed he'd found a freedom they could only dream of. But all agreed on one thing. The clockmaker had returned to his first love, the immeasurable wonder of the world. End of The Clockmaker by John Van Stan. Thanks for listening.